All right. So yesterday, the New York Islanders took their final bow. They were overmatched. Tampa overmatched them, took them out, and Tampa's been considered a dark horse from the beginning by a lot of people. And right now, depending on, see, it's hard to say. If Washington knocks out Pittsburgh, they have to do it in 7. So if Washington completes that comeback, Tampa's resting. If Pittsburgh knocks Washington out tonight, Pittsburgh gets probably somewhat of a rest, but about the same as Tampa. And then the team should be equally healthy and good to go. And Pittsburgh has had a relatively light schedule in terms of they didn't have to go to a game 7 in the first series, same as Tampa. So I want to say if Washington completes this improbable comeback, their odds against Tampa are worse than Pittsburgh's would be. But I don't know, because if you come back from 3-1 down, it can be very inspirational. It can drive you forward. It's hard to say, because momentum is one of those funny things in the playoffs. And one of the true things I've heard recently was where some commentator, and I don't remember which commentator it was on Sportsnet, said they didn't believe in momentum from game to game. And they're right. There isn't any. Every game at the start of the game is its own independent entity. Whatever happened the game before that doesn't matter. But I look at the road Tampa's taken. I look at Bishop and net. I look at their blue line. I look at their depth at forward. They don't even have Stamkos playing yet. The funny thing is, if Stamkos comes back, that can mess them up. Because right now they've got 4 lines that are rolling. They've got six defensemen that are rolling. We're used to feeding the puck up to those guys up front. You bring in Stamkos, he is a big name. He is the guy that the team's going to say, okay, he's back. And sometimes you'll see players just sort of relax and go, well, he'll get it. And they'll pass it to him more, and they'll wait for him to kind of save them from themselves. In Vancouver, we've had that problem for the last 8 years with the Sedins. That no matter who it is in Vancouver, they just wait for the Sedins to do it by themselves. And then when the Sedins can't do it alone, everybody throws their arms in the air and say, well, these guys suck. Nah. There's always going to be a part of me that wishes that the Sedins had played in Detroit. Come here, Shadow. Come on. Shadow. Leave her alone. Come on. No cat fights this morning. Shadow. No. Hey. Now you're being a prick. Now you're being a prick. Come on, Maggie. You're being a prick. No. There, Maggie. I chased him off. All right. Anyhow. But Stamkos' problem is one of, if he comes back, he might be the Achilles heel that costs Tampa the series, thus the Stanley Cup, thus he can't get signed by Tampa. And it could be tough for him to command the $11 million he's going to want in the offseason if the team falls apart when he goes back. It could negatively affect his value. He's almost better off just not playing at this point. And Stamkos is going to want $11 million. And every now and then I'll hear people saying, "Oh, well, Stamkos will take less money to play in Toronto." What are you basing that on? He's never said it. Nobody's ever. And how often do players actually take a discount? You could argue Crosby has a discount in Pittsburgh at $8.7 million a year. If it's an $11 million cap per player, Stamkos is going to want at least $10 million. Because he's going to want a 7-year contract. He's not going to sign a 7-year contract at $8 million a year. Yes, that's a lot of money to us. But to a superstar player who could potentially score 50 goals a season, it's not. Not when somebody else is making 10 plus. And Taves and Kane make 10 plus. They've won cups. If it's going to come down to cups, yes. Taves is without equal. But even when Taves and Kane signed, the perception was they probably could have got more if they wanted it. Almost making it sound like they took a hometown discount. If Stamkos is going to want $11 million, Tampa doesn't sign him. I don't know who does, other than Detroit. Maybe the Rangers. Because we're back in that age of 20 years ago where if you want the big money, you go to Detroit, Boston, the Rangers. It's coming back. Oh, God, if Boston. Oh, God, no. I had to say Boston. Oh, God. I just had this horrible vision of Boston signing Stamkos. And it's a horrible vision because they'd have to trade Krejci to make it happen. Oh, God. I mean, they could buy out Seidenberg, and they could probably move some money around and make it happen, but Stamkos is not what Boston needs. Boston needs to develop its prospects and get them going, and no. So, but this is Tampa. My Bruins-centric mind can just go away for a while. Tampa has all the keys it needs to unlock itself a Stanley Cup this year. And I'm having a hard time not predicting they're going to win it. But, if Pittsburgh takes apart Washington tonight, then I'm going to say, oh, Pittsburgh will win it. And out west, I don't know. I have a funny feeling that whoever wins the West is the runner-up. That whether it's St. Louis or San Jose, they get to the final and they lose. I don't see the Western teams being able to beat the Eastern teams. That's just me. Joe Thornton apparently has decided to take one last run, and Pavelski and Hurdle are really the keys for San Jose. But I just don't see them being able to compete with the Lightning or the Penguins, or, in the most unlikely scenario, the Capitals. That'd be the Capitals coming back from 3-1 down and then knocking out Tampa. It's not very likely. I know they've got home ice all the way through the playoffs, but man, it's not an easy road that they're taking. So, yeah, it's hard for me not to pick Tampa right now. Kucherov is the real deal. And I've felt that way about Kucherov since he was a draft pick that nobody paid much attention to. And then NHL 2014. NHL 14, whatever. Actually brought my attention to him because every time I ran a GM, this Kucherov kid came up out of nowhere. I'm like, what the hell? Who's this Kucherov? What the hell? Why is he an 88? And then I looked at him. I'm like, what do they mean he's got elite potential? Who the hell is this kid? So I looked him up. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's pretty good. He's got good stats. So I've tracked him since then. And nobody paid any attention to him outside of the Tampa sphere. It's like Matt Murray in Pittsburgh. Outside of the Penguins management knowing what they had, the rest of us fans didn't really pay much attention to Matt Murray. And then in the playoffs, he plays fantastic. Pittsburgh management isn't surprised, but the rest of us morons are. But Kucherov really is, I think, the main guy. I think Kucherov, Johnson, Palat, I think these guys are the present and the future for the Lightning. And if they can lock all these guys down long term, Tampa could be a force. Tampa could put together a Stanley Cup run similar to Chicago's, where Chicago had 3 out of 5. That's as close to a dynasty as we're ever going to get. It'll never happen again. There'll never be another dynasty in the NHL. Or 3 out of 6. Yeah, 3 out of 6. But winning one every 2 years is about as good as you're going to get now. Because of all of the coaches, all of the replays, because of the salary cap, player turnover, just the fact that there's so much parity, you're never going to see a dynasty again. An old-fashioned 3 or 4 in a row, 3 out of 4 years, it's likely never going to happen again. It's just too hard. That's why when I see people criticize a team and say, oh, well, they choked. Honestly, everybody is so equal now. It is hard to spot a choker unless they're a first-place team and they lose in 4 straight. Vancouver Canucks against the Kings, not that long ago. where they were President's Trophy winners, and they got swept in the first round. And that's that's about as big a choke as you're going to get. And yeah, the Kings won the Cup that year, but it didn't matter. It was a sign that things were going downhill. And Pittsburgh is an example of a team that stayed on course, even though the results seemed to dictate they might need to tear things apart and start over. They didn't trade away their veterans. They didn't get frustrated and give up on everybody. They've kept them all pretty much. It's a very similar core now to the one that won the Cup in 2008 or 2009. 2008 was the Red Wings, but it just goes to show if you want it bad enough, and if you have enough faith in your team, they can come around and they can reward you for that faith in them. And I look at the Sedins in Vancouver again, and the faith the Canucks showed them. They eventually became top-notch players, and they're still top-notch players. They just don't have anybody to play with. Once Burrows lost his touch, it's been rough. I mean, the closest they had to a winger this year was Brandon Sutter, and then he got hurt at the quarter point of the season, and he hasn't been back. So it's tough. It's tough to be those guys without a support group. And when you look at the teams that are still in the NHL, in the playoffs, you've got Pittsburgh and Tampa, deep teams. Nashville is a deep team. They're not like superstar laden, but they're a very deep team. They can roll 4 lines, and they're 4 good lines. And even the Islanders just got eliminated yesterday. Good fourth line. Can't put the puck in the ocean. Good fourth line. San Jose has tons of depth. St. Louis has a lot of depth. I wasn't betting against St. Louis at the start of the playoffs for any reasons other than 2. 1, they were against Chicago, who's been their nemesis, and 2, St. Louis has this 50-year history to go against. And when you have almost 50 years of not making it to the final and winning it, it's hard to suddenly go, okay, this is the year, because people have said that before. So they're not out of the woods. They're against Dallas. Oh wait, yeah, they are. Dallas's goaltending is terrible. If I did a shot every time that Dallas's goaltending lets them down during a game, I'd be hammered all the time watching Stars games, and that would truly be disturbing. But it's been a great playoffs, really has. And I'm happy for Tampa. I was going to wear my Tampa jersey for this video, but I'm not going to do that today. Once we reach the Final Four, I have jerseys for all of the teams that are still left in the playoffs. So I may very well just employ I'm going to wear the jersey of the team that won the day before. I used to do that all the time. The only 2 NHL teams I didn't have a jersey for were the Minnesota Wild and the New York Islanders. That's still the case. The Wild, because they've never had a jersey that I really wanted to own. And the Islanders, because, well, it's the Islanders. It's much the same thing. Their jerseys aren't really all that great. The one jersey of theirs I've thought about getting is the jersey for the Islanders from last year. They actually retired it. The ugly third jersey that just has Islanders and it's black with blue and it's got the Islanders and it's just ugly. It's just there's ugly written all over it. I'm thinking about buying that one. I found it online. I'm thinking about picking that one up because it's just so beautifully ugly. And I've got ugly jerseys now. My goal is to have ugly jerseys and pretty jerseys. I qualify this as a pretty one, and just have them nicely mixed up so that when I make videos like this, it's a different look every time I do a video. So, anyways, yeah, that's it for today. We'll see if the Lightning win the Cup or not. I would not be surprised if they did. They have fantastic odds right now. I honestly will stick to my predictions as they were, and Pittsburgh being the only team left that I predicted to go to the final, I'll say fine, I'll predict they'll win the Cup. But, man, Tampa's impressive. Very, very impressive. and they're scoring against the flow of the play, and that is so massive. Such a big deal. Alrighty, that's it for today.